He won a Supercross Championship. He beat a future Hall of Famer using mind games and sheer will. He once outrode the entire 450 class as a 250 specialist at the most brutal track on the calendar. And then he burned it all down. Jason Lawrence had every tool you need to become the greatest in the sport. Raw speed that made veterans stop and stare. A riding style so fluid it looked effortless. A fearlessness on the bike that you genuinely cannot teach. So, what happened? Jason Lawrence grew up in Estelle Manor, New Jersey. Not exactly the motocross capital of the world. The sport's biggest prospects back then were coming out of California or Florida, trained by factory-backed programs with serious money behind them. Lawrence had none of that. What he had was his grandfather, Don Hyder, a former racer who owned a motorcycle shop. Don was the one who put Lawrence on a bike, and in the absence of his father, who wasn't in the picture, Don gave him something to hold on to. Lawrence wasn't chasing championships at that point. In his own words, his goal was simply to make it on TV in a main event. That's it. Not a title, not a factory contract, just to be seen competing at the highest level. There's something honest about that, and maybe that's the thing that makes his story hit differently than most. Even among top amateurs, Lawrence had a reputation for doing things on a motorcycle that didn't quite make sense. Lines other riders wouldn't attempt, whips that looked effortless, the kind of raw bike control that veteran racers notice immediately. But talent like this doesn't stay quiet for long. In 2005, Lawrence showed up to the Amateur National Motocross Championship at Loretta Lynn's ranch. This is the Super Bowl of amateur motocross, the place where careers are made and where factory teams go shopping for their next big investment. And waiting for Lawrence there was Ryan Villopoto, one of the most hyped amateur prospects in years, groomed and backed by the full Kawasaki machine. Lawrence didn't care about any of that. He beat Villopoto in all 3 motos, straight up, head-to-head, 3 times. By every reasonable measure, that should have locked up the AMA Horizon Award, given to the most promising graduating amateur of the year. The award went to Villopoto. The motorsports establishment had already decided who their guy was. Lawrence had just beaten him on the track, and it still wasn't enough. That moment planted something in him that never fully left, a distrust of the system. A sense that the deck was stacked, and honestly, looking at what happened, you can't fully blame him for feeling that way. It also lit the fuse on a rivalry with Ryan Villopoto that would define the early part of Lawrence's career. Lawrence turned professional in 2005 aboard a Suzuki RM Z250. His rookie season was exactly what you'd expect from a kid still figuring out the professional level. He finished 16th overall in the 125 MX class. Flashes of speed, moments of brilliance, mixed with the rough edges of someone still learning the game. 2006 was better. He improved to 11th in Supercross Lites West Series and 14th outdoors. The speed was there, the results were trending up, the trajectory looked good. Off the track was a different story. In August 2006, Lawrence was arrested and convicted in Riverside, California, on charges of resisting and obstructing a police officer. It was the first official crack in what would become a pattern, a warning sign that went unheeded. Then came 2007, and everything shifted. Riding for Yamaha of Troy, Lawrence started posting championship-level results. 2nd overall in the Supercross Lites West Series, 4th overall outdoors. He had arrived, and so had the drama. The opening round of the 2007 Toyota Motocross Championship at Hangtown will be remembered for a long time, and not just for the racing. During practice, Lawrence went after Villopoto. Aggressive blocking moves, calculated irritation. Call it gamesmanship, call it provocation, but Lawrence was clearly doing it on purpose. Villopoto snapped. He got off his bike and threw an uppercut at Lawrence while still holding his motorcycle. The paddock went sideways. The AMA stepped in hard. Villopoto was fined $2,500. Lawrence, deemed the primary instigator, was hit with a $7,500 fine, a year of probation, and the 40th gate pick for the motos. That last part was brutal. Gate pick is everything in motocross. Being sent to the back of the line with a 40th pick basically cost him the race before it started. But here's where Lawrence surprised people. He looked at that situation and instead of just sulking, he actually studied it. He recognized that Villopoto had beaten him in nearly every race that year. He understood that raw talent alone wasn't going to be enough against a well-funded, well-structured factory program. So he started thinking differently.
Finish line jump on the outside. Lawrence is going to take it because it's a lefty. Makes a mistake and Grant holds on.
Going into 2008, Lawrence linked up with trainer Ryan Hughes, known throughout the sport as Rhino. Hughes was a former pro with a reputation for absolutely brutal conditioning programs, the kind of training that breaks people before it builds them. Lawrence was many things, but disciplined wasn't usually one of them. Hughes found a way to work with that. He got Lawrence fit enough to charge hard at the end of races, which is exactly where championships are won and lost. With Villopoto racing on the East Coast circuit, Lawrence's main competition for the 2008 Supercross Lites West Championship was Ryan Dungey, riding for rockstar Makita Suzuki. Dungey was everything Lawrence wasn't on paper. Consistent, structured, disciplined. He had a clean image, strong sponsorship relationships, and a machine built around routine. Lawrence spotted all of that and identified it as a weakness. His theory was simple. Dungey was a phenomenal rider, but he was easily rattled when things got unpredictable. So Lawrence made everything unpredictable. He turned practice sessions into psychological operations, matching Dungey's lap times not to train, but to mess with his head, staring him down in the paddock. The stories that came out of that season are genuinely wild. There were accounts of Lawrence tracking Dungey in a rental car back to his hotel just to mess with him. Whether or not every detail of that legend is precise, the effect was real. The psychological pressure got so intense that when Dungey found out his gear sponsor, One Industries, had also signed Lawrence, Dungey immediately terminated his contract and switched to Fox Racing rather than share any brand association with him. That's not just rivalry, that's Lawrence living rent-free in someone's head. The crucial moment came at the third Anaheim round. The track conditions were rough, the kind that reward aggression and punish hesitation. Lawrence used that. He pulled away from the field and won convincingly. Dungey, trying to claw back points, pushed too hard and went down late in the race. The championship was swinging. Lawrence went on to win consecutive rounds at San Francisco, Anaheim 3, and San Diego. He built a 6-point lead heading into the season finale at Quest Field in Seattle. What happened there told you everything about how Lawrence operated when he was locked in. He wasn't reckless. He didn't charge. He rode smart. A second-turn pileup took out several riders, and Lawrence avoided the carnage entirely, settled into second place behind Dungey, and rode it home. Second place at Seattle, 2008 AMA Supercross Lites West champion. He'd done it, and he'd done it by getting into the head of a rider who would go on to become one of the greatest in the history of the sport. Ryan Dungey is a Hall of Famer, and in 2008, Lawrence took him apart mentally before a single gate dropped. By that point, Lawrence had become one of the most polarizing riders in the sport. Some fans loved him because he refused to play the corporate game. Others thought he was a disaster waiting to happen. The championship win should have been the start of something. Instead, it was the high point. Just weeks after his title was confirmed, the AMA removed his probation in May following the win. Lawrence immediately went back to being Lawrence. In June 2008, before the Freestone National in Texas, he rolled a rental car. Not his car, his team mechanic's rental car. He was the newly crowned champion of his class, and he showed up to a national race weekend having just destroyed property belonging to someone on his own team. The AMA hit him with a $25,000 fine, which they suspended on the condition that he kept his nose clean for 1 year. He lasted less than 30 days. Over the July 4th weekend, at the Redbud National in Michigan, Lawrence got arrested for disorderly conduct following a physical altercation. He spent that night in the county jail and got out on bail the next morning. The AMA didn't hesitate. Indefinite suspension, outdoor season over, and that suspended $25,000 fine immediately collected. Just like that, the summer of 2008 went from a championship celebration to a complete collapse. Lawrence regrouped for 2009 under a new team structure. Dropping the Yamaha of Troy branding, he came back as part of the Boost Mobile AM/PM Monster Energy Troy racing team, managed by Scott Sepkovich of Crown Athlete Management Group. The behavioral issues didn't go away. In February 2009 at the San Francisco Supercross, another altercation, another suspension. In April at Jacksonville, he got into it on the track with Brock Hepler, resulting in a suspension from the final 2 rounds of the season, a $10,000 fine from the AMA, and a $3,000 fine from the FIM. But right in the middle of all that chaos came March 7th, 2009, the Daytona Supercross. If you know Supercross, you know Daytona. The circuit was designed by Ricky Carmichael, the GOAT himself, and it's widely considered the most physically demanding track on the entire calendar. Long, rough, punishing, relentless. It grinds riders down over the course of a main event in a way that no other track quite manages. Lawrence was a 250 lights specialist. He had no business being a threat in the premier 450 class, and he qualified fastest. The main event started with a massive first-turn pileup that collected James Stewart, the championship favorite at the time. Lawrence read the inside line, threaded through the carnage, and by lap 3, he had passed early leader Mike Alessi to take control of the race. For much of the race, Jason Lawrence led the premier 450 class at Daytona. As the laps mounted, the physical toll of the heavier machine started showing. Chad Reed, one of the best in the world at that point, methodically reeled him in and made the pass for the lead. Lawrence held on and crossed the line in second place. Second place at Daytona in the 450 class as a lights specialist. That result told you something that no championship number or lap time could. He had the speed to beat the best riders in the world when everything lined up. The ceiling on his ability was genuinely limitless. The question was never about what he could do on a motorcycle. That summer, everything fell apart for good.
What's going through your mind when you're out there in the lead in the Daytona Supercross?
Lawrence was involved in a physical altercation in Riverside County, California. He assaulted a friend named Ryan McGriddle and, by the accounts of the proceedings, bit off a portion of McGriddle's ear. The nature of the charge was severe enough that this wasn't going to be handled with fines and suspensions. On September 8, 2009, just 46 days after finishing third overall at the Washougal National, Lawrence stood before Judge Judith Clark in Riverside County Court, charged with assault with a deadly weapon. Even McGriddle himself spoke on Lawrence's behalf during the sentencing. It didn't matter. The judge looked at the totality of Lawrence's record, the prior convictions, the fines, the suspensions, the pattern of behavior that stretched back years, and she determined that suspended sentences and financial penalties had accomplished nothing. Lawrence was sentenced to 365 days in Southwest Detention Center in Riverside County, with 2 days credited for time already served. 3 years of probation on top of that. He was 22 years old. The entire 2010 Supercross and Motocross preseason was gone. He tried to come back later in 2010, scoring 62 points in the 450 SX class and just 6 points in 450 MX outdoors. The results told the story. The timing was off. The preparation wasn't there. The momentum was gone. After I got out of jail, I tried to race, but I wasn't ready. I decided then that I was done, he said. He walked away from professional motocross at 23, a year in jail, a career cut short at the exact moment most riders are hitting their peak years. The 2008 championship already felt like a lifetime ago.
Step down. What a great spectator obstacle that is. Just a classic hang.
The thing about motocross is that it doesn't let go of the people who love it. And whatever else you can say about Jason Lawrence, the man loves riding motorcycles. In the last few years, he's slowly worked his way back into the sport. Not as some full-time comeback story, but in pieces. Showing up in Moto media, telling stories on podcasts, riding again, racing again. In 2023, he popped back up at the Ironman GNCC on a Phoenix Racing Honda and finished second in the industry class. The GNCC Ironman is one of the hardest one-day races in off-road racing, and the fact that Lawrence went looking for that kind of challenge tells you the fire is still there. Around that same stretch, there was even talk of an arena cross return with Phoenix Racing Honda before the whole thing fell apart. Then in 2024, he went back to Loretta Lynn's ranch and raced the 25-plus class, finishing 5th overall. The same place where his amateur career exploded onto the national stage was suddenly part of his story again. He's also become a familiar voice around the sport again, showing up on shows like the Whiskey Throttle Podcast, Gypsy Tales, and the Racer X Weed Show, talking about old rivalries, regrets, and how he sees the current generation. Ryan Dungey even sat down on Gypsy Tales and opened up about the psychological toll of that 2008 title race. A future Hall of Famer talking about how much Lawrence got inside his head. That's not nothing. That's a real legacy.
He had me. He had me in his hands. Like, this guy could play with me.
So what do you do with a career like this? Jason Lawrence never lost a championship because someone was faster. He wasn't beaten by the competition. He was beaten by the life he chose to live off the bike. The same chaotic, unpredictable energy that he used to dismantle Ryan Dungey's mental game in 2008 was the same energy that got him arrested, suspended, and eventually sentenced to a year in jail. He used chaos as a weapon, and eventually, the weapon turned on him. What makes his story different from other cautionary tales in sports is that he knew exactly who he was. He never pretended to be something else. He never played the corporate game. He told anyone who would listen that he didn't care about being in magazines or fitting into the industry's idea of what a professional athlete should look like. And he meant it. The sport has had plenty of talented riders. It's had very few who were genuinely impossible to ignore. Jason Lawrence, for the years he was at his peak, was impossible to ignore. And that's the part of JLaw's story that still gets to people. Not the wins, not the crimes, not the controversy. The question of what might have been if just a few things had gone differently. He had the speed to be a multi-time champion. He proved it at Daytona. He proved it in 2008. He proved it every time he lined up healthy and focused. The sport never fully got to see what the best version of Jason Lawrence could do. And that might be the most honest ending to this story there is. Was Jason Lawrence one of the biggest wasted talents motocross has ever seen? Or was he just the only guy honest enough to be himself in a sport that didn't know what to do with him? Drop your take in the comments. Thanks for watching, and stay wicked.